The meeting is live.
Great. Welcome everyone to our ITGS committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, council members Blumenfield and Councilmember Price. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Could we do a roll call? Mr. Espinoza.
Yes, Councilmember Rahman.
Here.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield present.
And Councilmember Price.
Vice President.
3 members and a quorum, Madam Chair.
Great. Okay, so should we get started with public comment?
Yes, that would be great. Would you like me to read the instructions into the record?
Yes, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 161-892-0108 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for a participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak.
Madam Chair, there is no public comment at this time.
Wow, okay. Well, I guess we can move on then.
So will you be closing public comment at this point?
Yeah, I mean, we can wait for, is there any indication, Megan, that anyone else is coming on?
I don't believe so, but if you want to hang on for a moment, that would be fine.
No, that's okay. I think we're good. We can move on. Yeah, let's close public comment if there's no one here.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So, should we move on to today's agenda?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. Looking over the agenda, I thought we could take items 2, 3, and 5 on consent, unless there were any objections from other committee members.
Madam Chair, I have a question, a very quick question on item 2, so we could call that one special.
Okay, great. And I've lost my place on my briefing notes. And I've lost my, oh, there you are. How do you guys manage it with so many different windows open? It's very confusing. Fantastic. So I guess we can take items 3 and 5 on consent then.
Yes, would you like me to call the roll on those 2 items?
That would be great.
Councilmember Rahman?
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenfield?
Blumenfield, aye.
And Councilmember Price? I believe you're muted, Councilmember Price.
Aye.
There you go. Thank you so much. So item number 3 and item number 5 pass.
Great. Okay, so should we get started with item number 1?
Yes, would you like me to read that into the record?
Sure, that would be great.
Item number 1 is a verbal discussion from the Information Technology Agency on the agency's top priorities and projects.
Great, and today I'm very excited because Mr. Ross is here to give this presentation. Thank you so much for coming and joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. So, Ted Ross, General Manager with the Information Technology Agency. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show, since we were requested to provide some slides, to go ahead and show those items.
Great.
Michael, can I confirm? Can these be seen?
Yes, we can see them. Internally and externally, just for the public, these slides will be available on the internet afterwards.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to speak to them so that they could be understood via audio quite well. And so what we did is we put together, based on the request from this council committee, for the Information Technology Agency, we put together some key top priorities and projects and providing it in the form of an update. So just as a bit of a reminder for everybody, just kind of about us. The Information Technology Agency has 363 employees. They're spread across 19 different divisions, and we provide around 374 different technology services. And this covers just a real litany of different services, everything from basic computer support or smartphone support, all the way to our telephone systems that are used by tens of thousands of city employees. Our 311 call center is a part of our operations. We do a lot with public safety, radio and communications, as evidenced by the Hollywood sign in that tower just above the Hollywood sign known as Mount Lee that provides public safety communications for ambulances, firefighters, police officers, etc. We run the LA City View Channel 35 TV station, and then we just do a whole series of other things, of data centers and networks and applications and websites. And so there's really a lot that fits in ITA. Our mission as a department is really to be a best-in-class IT department that delivers what we call responsive, responsible, and excellent technology. Responsive because there's a lot of technology out there that's not very useful to people. So it's extremely important to us that the technology that we provide, whether we're building it or whether some contractor is building it under our guidance, that it's responsive to the needs of our customers. And we have a lot of different customers. Our elected officials are customers, city employees are customers, but most importantly would be over 4 million people who call LA home, over 500,000 businesses that operate in LA, and then all the visitors who come through LA. So we want our technology to be responsive. We also work to make our technology responsible. We know it's more than just technology. The technology we have has an environmental impact. So even just from a sustainability perspective, our data center uses electricity and cooling and all these other requirements. Also responsible because, we're an IT workforce, and so we really do work hard to be as diverse as Los Angeles itself. So we feel that hiring and having diversity in our hiring is an extremely important aspect of it. And then excellent because, of course, if we're going to do technology, it needs to be excellent. It needs to work. It needs to be reliable. It needs to have a lot of great features to it. So these are really 3 items that we show in our mission. When it comes to our strategic priorities, every year we submit a memo to the mayor's office called the General Manager Review Memo. And in that we have key strategic priorities that really inform the investments we make and the projects that we initiate. So in addition to our daily operations, here would be our following strategic priorities. So number 1 is digital transformation of city departments. We know it's not good enough just for ITA to deliver great technology. It's really important that all city departments become really adept and really good at using technology. Everything from animal services all the way to zoo. We need every city department to be effective, whether it's communications infrastructure like Wi-Fi and phone communications, all the way to best leveraging the cloud for the services they provide, whether it's a need for mobile apps or simply mobile responsive websites. So there's a lot of things that we need to do because technology really isn't a department. It's the set of tools in which every department performs its functions. So digital transformation has been one of our high priorities over the last several years. And this has become only more obvious during COVID pandemic, where digital is simply how business is being done. And so the digital transformation investments we made prior to COVID have really yielded multifold benefits. And during COVID, of course, we continue to double down and triple down and quadruple down on what it takes for every city department to transform digitally. The second one is technology that improves public welfare. Quite often in government, all too often our technology serves government, and there's a lot of value in that. Technology that I deploy that keeps sanitation trucks running and coordinated or helps parks is extremely important, and that does impact the welfare. But ITA loves to identify projects or initiatives that really can directly improve the public benefit, and so we like to prioritize those where possible. Third would be building next generation IT infrastructure and capabilities. Quite often, ITA is looked to run our networks, to establish workloads in the cloud, to run things like public safety communications, and it's extremely important that we as an IT department can maintain the best infrastructure where possible and have the right kinds of capabilities so that other city departments can really get their job done. And let's be frank, if ITA isn't the one who runs those responsibilities, who can? It's very difficult for someone like LAPD to run all their IT infrastructure because it's integrated with LA Fire Department and emergency management. It's very difficult for planning or building and safety to run a network when it needs to connect to the internet and needs to run over city infrastructure. So IT is very much required in those key areas. And the fourth one has to do with recruiting and developing top-tier IT human resources. As some of these council members who've been with us a while know very well, we were at a point about 4 or 5 years ago where about half of IT staff were eligible for retirement. So there was a lot of hiring done in the 80s and 90s. There were hiring freezes that occurred in the early 2000s. And so we actually were at a point where, if you were to look at it as a population pyramid, that we would look almost like Denmark, where many of our staff were in the older population, and we didn't have a lot of the newer generations who were coming in. And so we've been very focused on recruiting and developing excellent IT human resources. So even in a modern world where you can leverage contractors, or you leverage things like software as a service, and there's so many different kinds of tools that don't require you to build everything yourself, still having the right types of city service, city bureaucracy, members of the civil service who can perform and manage projects has been extremely important. And I would honestly say that the strongest asset that ITA has is not even just the technology, but it's the people who work at ITA. With these being our 4 strategic priorities, when asked what our top projects are, to admit, we have right now 147 open projects. And so I'll go ahead and discuss some key projects, but just letting you know that even during a pandemic, we have a lot of work that we're always involved with. And we have 123 what are called CSRs, and these are communication service requests in which a department will ask for, let's say, improved internet in a location, or they need to move staff to a location. So these are all open kind of small projects that we work with. So in the digital transformation front, I'd like to zero in on one project that's certainly been a top priority for us, and that is the LA Digital Strategy. So over the past 3 months or so, the ITA has been working with over 150 members of other departments as a part of what we call our IT Policy Committee. It's something that we've been doing for years, where we meet every month or two, and we start to really zero in on how to improve technology at the city. And so it includes all the different departments and IT managers from every department. And what we did, though, we did something very specific related to COVID, is we analyzed, as a part of the mayor's ED29 initiative, we analyzed 97 different city services that were paused by COVID-19. And our focus is, well, if these services were paused due to COVID, what can we do to use digital tools and technologies to reopen them all? Certainly not everything can be reopened. One of the items identified by one of the departments was HIV testing. That's certainly not something we can do virtually. But certainly the ability to do so safely, to be able to schedule an appointment, come in and have minimal, really contactless government was important. So as a result of this digital strategy, we identified 13 key technologies that, if implemented across city departments, would greatly improve the services that we provide to residents and businesses. And when I say 13, this ranges everything from contactless contracts using something like e-signature to case management systems, so that people don't just call you up and you're putting information into a spreadsheet. You could really manage requests and interactions with customers, all the way down to better ways to obtain feedback online using Net Promoter Score and using the cloud. So we've got 13 key technologies, and we reviewed them with all the different city departments, and they gave a big thumbs up. And many departments are using this as their roadmap to improve their digital services. So we compiled all these findings into the City of LA Digital Strategy, COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, and we are working with departments to implement these improvements. Every month or so, we're doing a deep dive to help departments understand it. We've established standardized contracts. We've given useful resources. So if you have a question, let's say about improving your website, they can actually work directly with ITA's, some of ITA's best web services people. And so the LA City Digital Strategy is a very recent project that we're going to be working with departments easily over the next year or so. I'm certainly open for any questions, or I could also go into some of the other topics. So feel free to interrupt me whenever you'd like.
Okay, are there more slides, or did you want to?
Yeah, but there are some more. So this is a project under digital transformation. I also have some topics under welfare and some of the other strategies. So I'll work through those pretty quickly, and then I'll be open for any questions you all have.
Okay, sounds good.
So on the improving public welfare side, there's a few key projects I wanted to highlight. First of all is the regional procurement portal. So this month we're launching the new regional procurement portal for local businesses to bid on government as well as private sector contracting opportunities. It's a multi-phase project, and really the intent is to have it very easy to use for local businesses, minority business owned, etc. Small businesses are absolutely one of the most important stakeholders in this project. We have streamlined internal processes that make it easier for departments to publish the bid, receive electronic submissions, etc. Then we've got a lot better reporting for city managers. This is all being done in partnership with the mayor's chief procurement officer and with several other council offices. Also, there's the Angelino account. And so historically, different city apps would require people to have different user IDs and passwords. So if you can imagine, if you're, let's say, applying to start a business through the LA Business Portal, that's one login. Whereas if you're paying like your business taxes through LA Tax, a completely different user ID and password. And if you're maybe bidding on opportunities through LA Bavin, once again, a different user ID and password. So the Angelino account is a project that we initiated this last year, where it's one central user ID and password that gets you access to many apps. So we're working very closely with city departments to create this one unified digital ID. And that's all a partnership through with the Mayor's Office, the Mayor's Office of Budget Innovation, as a part of Executive Directive 29. In the area of next generation infrastructure, certainly one of the biggest projects is the Human Resources and Payroll project. So we are right in the middle and coming to the end of replacing a 21-year-old custom-built payroll system called Pacer with Workday. So, with a great, industry-leading product like Workday. We're in the first testing phase right now. So, there's many departments working very hard. We're testing over 1,700 features, and we're improving the product, I should say. And the system goes live in January 2022. So in less than a year, we'll be live on the Workday system. We also have projects very closely around public safety. IT does a lot of public safety work. We work very closely with fire, police, ambulance, EMD, et cetera. And we're in the midst of upgrading 33 different radio sites for the new radio systems for both fire and police. It's extremely critical that ambulances and that firefighters be able to communicate, interact, and coordinate with each other. They do this over voice radio systems, which runs on ITA's network. So this has been a major effort over the past couple of years, and we still have a couple more years of work on these items. And then, of course, the Mobile Worker Program. The Mobile Worker Program is where we're replacing these 22-year-old PBX phone systems with smartphones and VoIP. This one's a huge benefit for the city. We started this pre-COVID, and we've only, at the risk of sounding arrogant, we've only looked like geniuses during COVID, because this has allowed many city departments to send their staff to telework, and they could bring their city-issued smartphones with them. And it saves us a lot of money from phones that are ringing and no one's there to answer, to simply a much better technology. So this deployment of smartphones as opposed to traditional landlines is saving the city over $7 million in implementation, as well as 13% less cost per year. It empowers our employees, it creates a modern workforce, and it's much more resilient. As we identified with things like COVID, it allows them to actually take their work numbers with them. Developing and recruiting top-tier IT human resources, of course, our last strategic priority. We've been in the process of doing updated job descriptions for IT. Many of these have been written in the 1990s. We have new specs, a new career ladder. It covers 48 different IT positions, and it includes even unique items like entry-level positions that don't have a college degree requirement. So these are great ways for just a very diverse workforce to be able to get in and help promote in our department. The mayor's racial equity plan is very high on our priority list. That's Executive Directive 27. We've created a diversity recruitment video called Just Do IT. College recruitment was high on our list. Unfortunately, with COVID, that's really hindered our ability to do it and do it effectively, but we have been looking for virtual ways to do it. And last but not least is the intern program. We've got it in our budget process. We're seeking paid internships for candidates who come out of minority and disadvantaged communities, because once again, these are just IT jobs are fantastic jobs, and we want to have an IT workforce that looks like LA itself. So when asked what our barriers are to projects and priorities, I know you hear this a lot, but staffing, of course, is a big issue. Just take a look at these numbers. ITA in 2008 had 814 staff. In 2020, early 2020, we had 455. And today I have 363. So if you can imagine, I've lost almost 100 staff in the last 12 months. And we did not regrow since the Great Recession. This has been a huge issue for us at ITA. The second one, of course, is funding. Just even recently, our ITA budget was cut by $2.9 million. I understand we're in a terrible economic situation as a city, but it really does make it extremely hard for us to replace infrastructure, to lead digital transformation, all the other kinds of important efforts that have become even that much more important during COVID as we continue to have reduction in funding. And then number three is simply department compliance. You know, it's very hard sometimes in the city with 43 different departments to get departments to all row in the same direction. And quite often they have a good intent where they'll say, yeah, I agree, this is exactly what we want to implement, but we find ourselves always chasing various departments to try to get them to comply. And so we have good intentions from a lot of our departments and really good leaders, but sometimes we have mixed compliance to really make things happen. And then it goes with the old adage, it's not about a good idea, it's about making a good idea happen. And that's often sometimes one of the barriers, the challenges that we run into. So how can this committee help? Certainly support staffing requests where possible for filling vacancies. On the funding side, prioritize IT budgets, not just ITA's budget, but any technology budget request across the city that could help improve LA City services we're supportive of. And just continue to help champion IT initiatives among city departments. We know that COVID has exposed, whether it's in government or private sector, it's exposed weaknesses in people's digital solutions and their digital services. You can't go to a counter anymore. You can't have an interaction with a person to get 100 questions asked. And that requires all of us to up our game, to be better at the services we provide, to be more accessible through smartphones, tablets, computers, etc., so that people can connect with us 24/7. And honestly, this was a priority 2 years ago. It's become only a bigger priority during COVID. So thank you so much for letting us kind of run through this, and I'm certainly open for any questions that you have on this topic.
Great, thank you so much. That was very illuminating. And I wondered if other committee members had any questions for Mr. Ross. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Blumenfield.
Figuring out how to raise my digital hand there. Start off first, Ted. I so appreciate you and the work that you do. I've had the pleasure every year I've been on this council. I've been on the committee that directly is involved with your work, and I just think the capacity that you give to our city and that the technology does is so important and often underappreciated. Especially as we're cutting everywhere and we're also taking on new spending and doing things. The only way we can do more with less is if we actually have the digital backbone to make it happen. And so it's very concerning to see the reduction in sort of the back end of the house of our city is what's happening. But the projects that you mentioned and that you brought forward, I thought were all great. I did want to ask you about two other things that you didn't have on your list, but I know you're very involved with. I just wanted to ask. One is the digital code of ethics. When is that scheduled to come to this committee? I know that's something you've worked on quite a bit, and I always thought that was a very innovative and important thing as well.
Thank you. It is an item that we've fully drafted and provided to the mayor's office. It's been several months, and the mayor's office is still reviewing and chewing on the document. So I'll do yet another follow-up with it. They've had transitions in some of their staffing and some of their leadership. But we do have a fully drafted digital code of ethics and a digital bill of rights that we think is exactly the conversation of now. You couldn't be any more right. There's a lot of technology being deployed, but is it ethical? Is it trustworthy? It used to be that 5 years ago, everyone was telling me, Ted, you got to be innovative. And everyone's been innovative. But I think we need to not just be innovative anymore, but really be ethical with our technology. So it is right now with the mayor's office. It's been fully drafted for several months, and we're really ready to go. We're just getting final feedback from them.
Okay. Well, you can use this as an excuse to say that you're being nudged by a committee, or at least a council member, and
By the committee.
By the committee, yes, that you're being nudged to push that forward. So
you got it.
That'll help. The other one, as you know, I've been very focused on smart cities for a long time, and not just in terms of the backbone of all the things we're talking about, but how do we make all of our city and amenities and talk to each other and can be more efficient. Mr. Price and I were out a number of years ago, and we saw this in other places where smart city technologies have been really effective. And we've started it. And I did a motion, as you know, back in 2019 June, asking for a report on this. And I just wanted to, and I know you guys have been working on it. I know things are busy, but what's the status of that report in terms of releasing it? What hurdles have there been in terms of putting it forward? I want to get us to that LA 2028 smart cities strategy?
Another really great question. We had a committee that represented a variety of different departments and offices. We worked very hard in 2019, 2020. We've got almost a 60-page report. It's with the mayor's office doing final review. It is like the digital code of ethics. It's an item that we did complete this last year and are really ready to publish and continue to get to work on. And you couldn't be any more right. Smart cities is a great example in which a lot of departments are already doing a lot of great things, but it needs to be coordinated, it needs to be facilitated. So, the work that Department of Transportation does around traffic, it really does have an impact on street lighting and others. And so that committee has been, I think, a very effective way of doing it. I will follow up again and make mention in those two real key items. Thank you very much for raising them, and I'll follow because you couldn't be any more right on their importance.
Great. So that'll be another committee nudge, hopefully.
You got it.
Great. And that's it. I just want gratitude and appreciation for the work that you and the department do. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for those great questions. Councilmember Price, did you have any questions for Mr. Ross?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to echo my colleagues' comments about Ted. Ted, you're always resourceful, always cooperative, so we appreciate you're doing more with less, literally and figuratively. So we just appreciate your commitment.
I appreciate that. It feels like that's become my city career. I gained the reputation of being scrappy.
Well, that's why we need you.
I appreciate it.
But just a question of how we are integrating our services, integrating our connections, especially with some of our critical departments. I really appreciated your work, your collaborative work with other departments on the digital ID. I think that's going to be pretty exciting.
Yep.
The business portal, I know, is in conjunction with EWDD.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about the involvement with Parks and Recreation or the library. I know we have talked about some initial pilot efforts, but how are those activities going? Because those are the services that can really be in the neighborhood, on the blocks, and that's something I'm always very concerned about. So, give us a little update on your collaboration with Parks and Rec, collaboration with the library on any projects that you're working on.
That's right. At the risk of quoting Vidal Sassoon, really, if those city departments don't look good, we don't look good. And they really are the ones who are out in the streets. So Rec and Parks is a great example. I remember getting a phone call from Mike Scholl, general manager of Rec and Parks, in which he said, Ted, and this was back in summer, he says, we're in a situation where we have all these students who are being pushed online and they don't really have the right location of the resources to get access to computers or get access to tutoring to get their schoolwork done. And so Rec and Parks said, if we being Rec and Parks are able to open up a set of our community centers and our parks, can IT assist when it comes to connectivity, to get the internet, help support us around the computers, et cetera? I think that was a great example of a project that was implemented that has had fantastic benefit for LA's various communities. We assisted when recreation and park shelters were used for homeless shelters. We provided Wi-Fi connection, tablets, and hotspots to make sure that they had not only the right connectivity to be able to help run the shelter, but also that people had something to do, something productive to do while they were there. We've worked very closely with library. Unfortunately, a lot of those physical buildings have been closed, but we assist library with their connectivity. I was very proud with the city librarian, John Zabo, for him to be able to get that 100 gigabit speed at Central Library. And IT assisted very closely with that. So connectivity, resources, some of the checkouts of things like mobile devices, these have all been partnerships with library related to that. I find that recreation, parks, and library are some of the better digital inclusion leaders at the city, and wherever we can assist them, we always do.
Now, for the parks, are those hotspots going to be permanent, or what's the plan on that? Because, again, an important community resource for students and people looking for work and people just want to keep up.
It becomes a funding conversation. So
Okay.
we implemented them in such a way that they could be made permanent, but they do have a monthly cost. Depending on where the location is, we'd either use cellular or we'd use Spectrum or we'd use whatever the right provider was in that area. And so we'll continue to work with recreation parks to see what it takes to fund those so that they could get provided permanently.
Okay, good. And then lastly, talk a little bit more about the internship program. I know some of you guys are really been pushing and very proud of. What kind of outreach are you doing for it? Who's involved now? How many interns do you have? How does that program kind of flesh out?
Yeah, one thing we found is there's really some fantastic partners who've got their fingers in the neighborhoods, much better than even a city department could. So what we did was our strategy was to be able to connect with those organizations. So if we can get the paid internships made available, those organizations could go ahead and do the outreach to make it happen. So Mariam Abbasi, I know you are on this one. Can you describe like one of the recent groups who was trying to assist us with paid internship programs and some of the outreach that they do in LA communities?
Yes, one of the groups is through the LA Promise, and it's called the LA Promise Works program. That is a program that closely works with LA community colleges and bringing in paid interns for 3 to 6 months. In fact, ITA has had internship programs even with reduced resources and funding because that mentorship is very important to us. And we do offer, different type of office work and skills to interns that have been successful for them and help them apply for city careers or similar careers outside. So
is it our internship program, or you just have some interns that are working in the department?
So we would work with any internship program that is available. That the program would take care of the payments to the interns, and then we would take care of the placement of the interns into projects, and they're project-based. They're short projects that.
How many do we have now?
So we're working actually right now. I think, in fact, we were even interviewing this week to possibly bringing 10 interns for ITA under our citywide help desk, and that would be through the LA community colleges that LA Promise works. In the past, we worked with Pixel Exchange, which is part of the LA Chamber of Commerce. And every summer we had internships for 3 to 4 years, where it ranged from 15 to 20 interns coming into ITA in various areas, from applications to website development, support, and even administrative work, and assisted with the 6 weeks program during summer. That program is, it continues, and we can also do things like that during summer. So that's been very successful. And we
I certainly encourage any kind of internship program, and so continued success. I know it's a matter of leveraging limited resources.
Well,
I think that if you need any assistance, our council office is certainly willing to also help do some outreach, help identify individuals who may want to participate. So just use this as a partner. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Great. And Councilmember Blumenfield, you had a follow-up question.
Yes, thank you. Ted, when you were talking about the hotspots that Mr. Price was asking about, I was thinking about it. A number of years ago, we got a number of parks up using sponsors, and Toyota and some other folks who sponsor hotspots in parks. Is that still an active program? Because that would be a great way to what Mr. Price, aptly identified as a real need to get all these parks and all these access points up and running. Can we, expand that program rapidly to get more sponsors and more parks at the hotspots?
Yeah, I know it absolutely is still a priority, and it is still a project in progress. I don't have an update yet on the recent status, and I'll certainly follow up with Rec and Parks in regards to it, because anything we can do to continue sponsorship in those areas, I think, is extremely important.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I had a couple of questions for you, which are a little bit more general. Thank you so much for that great presentation. I am actually floored by the staffing numbers that you shared. I mean, it's just beyond beggar's belief, actually. And I really
I would agree. And when I look at comparative organizations in other cities, they're sizable. They're absolutely sizable, and it's become extremely difficult. The city of Los Angeles to staff up appropriately and get funded appropriately, and we have a very broad area of responsibility that's only become more important. So
yeah, I mean, the number of motions that you get every week that have to do with improving digital access and improving digital technology is just enormous.
Correct.
Taking that on with
and honestly, the people who suffer are really our customers. It makes us turn away work. It makes us reduce what we can offer. It makes us reduce what we could provide. So we're an award-winning organization, and we can do a lot more, but we certainly need the people to do it.
Two quick questions on that. Have you, as your staff has decreased, have you increased investments in subcontracting and, taking away some of the services that you're providing and having them be provided by external service providers? The city's doing that, to save on costs.
At times, yes. Unfortunately, we're in a bit of a free fall over this last year. And so because of managed hiring and our inability to fill positions, anytime a person leaves, whether it's from the separation incentive program or if a person transfers to another city department, we're unable to fill that position. So we are continually asking the CEO, mayor's office, and others to help us, at the very least, fill those critical positions and rehire into them. And in situations where we can't, we do seek contractor support to be able to provide it. We're in a bit of a double-edged sword right now, where contractual services money gets cut and people get cut. And so right now, unfortunately, everything gets cut. But admittedly, I do understand that when the city has a multi-$100 million deficit, that a lot of departments are in a very tough position. But I think one of the issues at ITA is that we did not regrow after the Great Recession. So,
and why was that? That was my second question. Is what happened? I don't know. I know the city shrank and then grew again. So now it's almost back to original staffing numbers. I don't know what happened over this last year, but at least before the pandemic, it was back at about 35,000, I believe. So I know that the numbers in other places did grow. What happened in ITA?
When we would request staffing, we did not get it. The key exception is we did get some staffing in the 311 call center about 2 years ago. Okay. But outside of that, we did not get new programmers, DBAs. We did not get network staff, but we would continue to be held at a low staffing level. So yes, requests for staffing were not approved.
And how did that compare to other departments across the city?
I think it depends. I think, if you were to look at general services or personnel, some of them have had key cuts and they weren't able to regrow. But then you look at various special funded departments, the building and safeties and others, I think grew quite well. So it's sometimes it's a tale of two cities in the city, of some departments that did regrow and some departments that really did not.
Okay, that's helpful. Troubling, but helpful. Thank you. So my follow-up, I had a couple follow-up questions to some of the pieces of work that you identified as part of under your digital strategy. Some of the things I think, like the Workday implementation, the partnerships with the public safety departments, that seems like that's programs that are really being driven by your department and working in partnership with other departments to move them forward, but firmly anchored in you and probably enthusiastically championed by you. Things like the regional procurement portal and where you're and the Angelino account, both of which seem like where you're the node of something that's dealing with so many other departments. I see Mayor Garcetti, a lot of that has been anchored out of the mayor's office, and he's leaving in 2 years. So I'm curious about, what is those processes don't stop in 2 years. And so what does a long-term process to drive that agenda forward look like to you? And how can this committee support that?
Sure. it's really interesting in government sometimes when there's a really good idea, what it takes to keep that idea continuing and really institutionalize it, right? When it comes to something like Angelino account, it was an idea inspired by ITA that the mayor's office grabbed a hold of and did an executive directive around it. We're in the process of implementing it. One of the benefits of something like Angelino account is once you've done the implementation, every city app is pointing to it. So we're in the process of getting Mile 311. We've already done Bavin. We're doing various apps. So it becomes institutionalized because it's a part of our technology. So as long as we keep funding the identity management solution, there's no way for that one to be dropped out. But something like the regional procurement portal, that does require a lot of leadership. It does require the mayor's chief procurement officer and many people on the quote business side who have to really champion those efforts. So while we are implementing a portal and we're delivering technology, if we don't continue to have that champion, that business leadership, those will just stop at whatever technical component it ended with. So there's a lot to be said about, from a council perspective and others, identifying those key initiatives and helping continue provide those leadership. A real shout out to Councilmember Krikorian, who and others who had helped really push this through in their ad hoc jobs committee. But I found that to be a very effective way through the ad hoc committee to be able to continue the conversation. So, council offices can do a really good job of staying on a topic using some of these various committees to do so.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And so we can maybe reach out to Councilmember Krikorian and figure out ways in which this committee can also support moving that forward. Okay. And then let me see if I had yeah, I had a broader question around resource requests and things like that, but I think we can continue this discussion in future committee meetings as it comes to specific issues. But I just wanted to thank you for being here today and for the detailed presentation. I'm very excited to continue working with you to make sure that we can support this incredibly essential work and to think about this, the staffing question, because it's really I found that to really really be mind-boggling in terms of how we expect the city to have really high digital standards and to focus on equity and a focus on outreach in the way that we need without staff.
My
Great.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, so as this was a discussion item, I don't believe any action is required by the committee at this time. Is that right?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, can we move on to item number 2?
Yes, item number 2 is a report.
Yes.
Item number 2 is a report from the Municipal Facilities Committee relative to a sub-license agreement with Hope of the Valley Rescue Mission for the use of Day Laborer Resource Center located at 11839 Sherman Way.
And Councilmember Blumenfield, you had a question about this item, is that right?
Yes, no, and I have no problem with the item. I certainly am rising to approve it. It just struck me as odd that it's a trip, that the labor center is a Triple H funded project, and I just want to, and I can imagine there's several reasons. Certainly, a labor center probably helps stem the flow of homelessness, of getting people jobs. It's probably associated with a navigation center. But I wanted to understand better this, and it's being done by Hope of the Valley, which is traditionally a group that does homeless housing and shelters. So help me understand the connection of why we're using Triple H funding and for a day labor center, and how that's all connected.
Good morning.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. I keep talking over everybody today.
I apologize. Sorry. This is Shafia Amir from the CIO's office. To clarify, the funding source for the Day Labor Center in this item is general fund. So this is part of EWD's network of 8 citywide day labor centers. It is co-located with this the Homeless Resource Center, and it's the same service provider for both of those centers. But the funding, at least on the Day Labor Center side, is the regular EWD funding, which is general fund.
So Hope of the Valley actually is doing, and they're great, by the way. I just never heard that they do labor centers. So they're taking that on. Is this a new thing for them?
I believe so, yes. The procurement for this was conducted by EWDD in June last year in 2020, and the council and mayor approved the results of the RFP for the day labor centers. And they are a new, Hope of the Valley is a new resource center to be implementing it. I believe the previous service provider at this site, which is in North Hollywood for the day labor center, was YPI, Youth Policy Institute, which went out of business. So this was a procurement that was done after that, and EWDD selected Hope of the Valley for day labor center.
And YPI sounds even more off-brand, doing a day labor center than Hope of the Valley.
Well,
Hi, this is Michael Mendoza with GSD Real Estate. YPI had been operating several day labor centers for the city for several years, and so they were a veteran day labor center operator. But as the previous member mentioned, they did go bankrupt last year, so that's why we switched over to Hope of the Valley, who's operating the navigation center. And since they're already on site, they kind of became the front runner for the additional services on the day labor part.
Right.
Yeah, the question I think for Councilmember Blumenfield though came because in the report for this, it does mention that funding for this is coming from the Prop HHH bond funds. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, that seems like the capital upgrades are being paid for out of Triple H.
Yeah, so that was a point of confusion for me as well. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, the initial project in its entirety did encompass some of those funds specific to the navigation center. And so when drafting the report, I didn't want to skip over that since some of the funds is being used for the entire project.
So it is Triple H funding being used for the labor center?
I believe the Triple H funding was for the navigation center, but the entire project encompassed the two different service portions, and to separate that would be, in terms of funding, will be difficult, from the build-out perspective.
And yeah, just to clarify then, Shafi from the CAO again, the services that are provided for the day labor center, like the staff costs and other those kinds of costs for the day labor center would be the general fund dollars. It's up to $175,000 for those services. EWDD does have a service contract in place with Hope of the Valley for the service provision. But yes, my understanding is that the capital improvements that happened, the physical site, probably the building costs were, because I believe the way that I think the site is that it's just one building, but I'm not exactly sure because, that could be clarified. But it's because they're so connected that they just encompass that with the HHH dollars.
Correct. There's actually 3 small buildings that encompass the whole site, which is part of the capital improvements.
Okay. Yeah. I don't fully understand it all, but I have a better sense. So thanks. Thank you.
I mean, honestly, it kind of seems like a good thing that investments in a location that were intended to serve one group of residents facing housing insecurity and housing vulnerabilities is now being additionally utilized to have other resources as well for day laborers, which seems like a good. I like it when services are in the same place. It makes it easier for people who need help to get the help that they need. So broadly speaking, this seems good, but I just want to make sure that is what is happening here. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, great. I guess at this point we can move ahead with this item, which I guess would mean that we need to concur with the Municipal Facilities Committee's recommendation.
Yes, we would be approving the recommendations as found in the Municipal Facilities Report.
Okay, great. And do we need to actually take a vote on that?
Yes, so I will call the roll. Councilmember Rahman?
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield?
Blumenfield, aye.
And Councilmember Price.
Aye.
So item number 2 passes.
Great. And thank you to Ms. Mir and Mr. Mendoza for answering those questions. I appreciate it. We will now take up item 4. Mr. Espinoza, do you want to read that item into the record?
Yes, item number 4 is the Information Technology Agency report in response to a motion from Councilmembers Price and Martinez relative to adding multiple languages to the MyLA 311 mobile phone application and the Get Connected Los Angeles website.
And I believe we have Mariam Abbasi here to answer questions about this as well. Is that right?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mariam Abbasi, Information Technology Agency. On February 19th, ITA submitted a report regarding adding multilingual capabilities to the MyLA mobile app and Get Connected Los Angeles website in response to motions submitted by ITGS. And to allow a 311 service request in a resident's native language, the 311 call center has a language translation service for over 100 languages. Additionally, the MyLA 311 website provides automated translation for 109 languages through Google Translate. Through these channels, about 7% of 311 service requests are submitted in a language other than English. Due to lack of funding and resources required to maintain multiple native mobile apps, the city has yet to offer the 311 mobile app in languages other than English. This is common in other places like in New York City, Chicago, and San Francisco also don't offer multiple languages for their mobile app. To establish a version of the MyLA 311 mobile app in another language, City of LA must do a few things. One, we would need to duplicate the code and software for both Android and iOS versions. And then we need to translate the app's content to the additional language and maintain, test, and translate the app's code and changes that happen every 2 months. So the cost to add an additional language, such as a Spanish version, is estimated to be about $65,600 for code changes, plus about $5,000 for translation services, plus $1,000 for annual maintenance cost. That would add up to $72,680. Additional languages would be discounted as shown in the report. Excuse me. So the second part of this motion is regarding adding multilingual options for the Get Connected Los Angeles website. The Get Connected Los Angeles website provides public with information regarding low-cost internet services, computer services, and computer training in order to help bridge the digital divide in Los Angeles. At the time of launch, the website was offered in English only due to our inability to provide language translations on the initial website platform. In the interim, ITA has translated this website into a second manually translated Spanish language version that is currently available on the site. ITA can re-platform the Get Connected Los Angeles website at minimal cost and add easy-to-use automated Google translation, which has been successful on other city websites. The ITA staff would need an estimated 2 to 4 weeks to implement and re-platform the website and add translation capabilities. My colleagues and I are now open for answering any questions on this report.
Great, thank you. And is there a source of funds that you have identified for the translation purposes, or is this something that you're looking to secure? Because it'll be about 90,000, right? plus an annual cost of 4,000, right?
Yes, we will require this additional funding to perform the changes for the MyLA 311 translation. And the report includes multiple languages, but the cost that we could do at least the first language, Spanish, would be above $72,000.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Above $72,000. So that would include to change the code and add the capability to do translation services for iOS and Android. We would need to spend 72,000. That includes 65,680 for the code changes, $5,000 for translation services, and we would also require $1,000 annually for maintenance costs.
And based on the 7% of service requests that you're getting in other languages, do you agree that these 4 languages are kind of the next 4 that you would recommend for taking this step? I mean, obviously Spanish.
Obviously Spanish, yes. The Spanish would be the first language to use, and then based on the 7%, the breakdown of the 7% is actually Spanish, with 6% of that being in Spanish. Okay. So the majority is in Spanish. And then the next language is Korean, followed by Mandarin, Armenian, Russian, Farsi, and Vietnamese. And this is based on the translation services that 311 is asked to do.
What a great city we live in.
I do.
Okay, Councilmember Blumenfield, you had a question? I think you're on mute.
Okay, I was saying this is great. Of course, when will approving this item move this forward with development and translation of the app, or does that have to be a separate budget request? What happens with this item?
Once approved, so if the council opts to provide translation services, if it's one version or the other, so depending on whether it's one version or multiple versions, yes, the recommendation will include a request, and it will have a fiscal impact of depending on how many languages we decide to implement, or because every language will create a new version of the mobile app that will be in the iOS or Android store that will have to be maintained as a separate mobile app and offered continuously. So yes, this does have a fiscal impact, and the recommendation will include a budget request.
My question, though, is specific to this item today. Does this moving forward, what does moving forward this item today mean? Does it mean?
I'm sorry. We provided information relative to the cost and the effort involved and the feasibility of providing multiple apps in additional languages. And the recommendation is that if approved, we would like to have funding. So pretty much we're asking, it depends on if you'd like to recommend it, then it would require funding. And I'm not exactly clear what may be the next step.
From what I understand of this, I think what we would do is then request the mayor's office to consider funding it in the next budget, right? Would that?
So this is Ted with ITA. This was Councilmember Price made the request for this, so we incorporated it into our follow-up report. So I think at this point it's considered informational. And we would certainly look to CLA and others to recommend if a new motion is required or if there needs to be an amendment to how this is approved. So right now the report does not have a recommendation with a fiscal impact on it. So I think we would need to figure out if this committee would like to go forward the right way to make the proper amendment to get this to proceed.
Great, thanks for that. Councilmember Price had a question, and given that this was your
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate your help in bringing this forward. Special shout out to Mrs. Abbasi and Ted Ross, ITA, for putting this report together. You know, this is a motion that should have been introduced, I think, a long time ago, but I'm happy that we're moving forward on it now. A few years ago, like several other council offices, my staff and I put together a clean and green campaign in the neighborhoods. For months, we would gather hundreds of community members and walk up and down the district. We picked up trash, cleaned the streets, disposed of large, bulky items. As a part of these efforts, we included an information component that consisted of reporting daily on the quality of life issues through the My LA 311 application. We encourage our constituents to use their phones to report bulky items, broken sidewalks, and much more, as you know, through the app. But we immediately realized that there was a language barrier for community members who don't speak English or understand English. And so I asked myself, how could a city with the largest immigrant population like LA, how could we create a program without thinking of language barriers? So by adding Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Korean, I think we're coming closer to creating the inclusive, multilingual spaces where all languages have value and equity, and I appreciate that. So I'm happy with the progress that we're making. I look forward to an expansion of this initial list. Madam Chair, I'm happy to introduce a motion of funding and whatever you think the process should be. But I'm just glad that we are moving forward on this very important element in our community outreach program.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and thanks for the history of that. That's really interesting that this came out of that neighborhood effort on bulky item requests. That's fascinating to hear, and I think will be interesting for other districts as well as we think about, trying to get more people to use 311. I kept thinking of, I read this study once on 311 in Manhattan, in New York City, and New York is so enormous, and like every request came from Manhattan for a 311, even though a lot of people live out in those boroughs. So I think getting more people to use 311 and making it easier for people to use 311 is really great. Okay, so I think what we can do at this time is probably just to note and file this report, and then, I think in the committee, can we, how do we, I'm sorry. This is where my experience, I think, fails me, which is if we want to think about then making a request for funding, how do we, is that just something that we all just say, okay, let's think about doing that, and then we take it forward as a motion separately?
I mean, I think we could, Jilly, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we could make a recommendation directly on this item here, that we recommend that the, ITA seek funding in this upcoming budget for this item. And then it'd be up to them to produce that to the mayor and have it become a budget request. At least we can do multiple things, but I think that's one thing we can do.
If the mayor doesn't include it, then that, there still might be an opportunity to include it later.
Okay.
As a,
Mr. Bloomfield is very skilled at that, so maybe he's guided in those ways.
And ITA can certainly do it as was proposed.
Okay, so great. So I will say, I guess I recommend that this committee note and file this report and request that this be included as part of your, I think, or that if other committee members agree that this be included as part of your funding request in this budget cycle for next year.
second.
Second.
Great. So now, does that mean we have to actually take a formal vote on this?
Yes, I can read the roll. So Councilmember Rahman,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenfield,
Blumenfield, aye?
and Councilmember Price.
Aye.
Excellent. So item number 4 is passed with the amendment.
Fantastic. And I believe now we're at our last item, item 6. Mr. Espinoza, do you want to read the item into the record?
Yes, this is a motion from Councilmember Rodriguez and Rahman relative to the incorporating Tom LaBonge's voice into the My LA 311 message.
yeah, Ms. Abbasi is here to talk about this one as well. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yes, Mariam Abbasi, Information Technology Agency. Yes, late Councilmember Tom LaBonge served the 4th District of Los Angeles from 2001 to 2015, loved Los Angeles, and was known as Mr. Los Angeles. He was a great believer in community services and a passionate advocate of the MyLA 311 service, which provides access to City of Los Angeles non-emergency services and general information. This council motion is directing ITA to incorporate Tom LaBonge's voice, saying, "Hi, this is Tom LaBonge. Let's continue and enjoy and love Los Angeles," into the MyLA 311 hold message. To do this, ITA has to obtain, and in fact, we have already obtained pre-recorded audio of Councilman LaBonge's saying this phrase, and we have provided this audio to Council Offices 4 and 7 for their feedback. The MyLA 311 message is the recorded greeting that is played to callers when they reach the 311 call center. The first part of it is introduction from the mayor, in which he directs emergency calls to 911 and offers Spanish callers a direct route to translation. The second part of it is hold music and messages regarding city services. So we recommend that the Councilman LaBonge audio be added to this second section. We typically keep the audio for about 6 months. That's our recommendation. So I'm available for any questions on this item.
Okay, I had a question on it. Oh, but Councilmember Blumenfield, please go ahead.
You go first. Do you want?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, of course, this is a great way to honor Tom and his legacy. But I was always curious, and Tom was the one who came up with the playlist for when we had the hold button, and we had the music, all those great songs that mentioned LA in the music. So many people loved that. That was my impression. And then we stopped doing that. And it seems like if we're going to honor Tom, it might be nice to also have his hold music playlist again, because it was a great LA playlist. Is there a reason why we don't have that anymore? I've never understood why we got rid of it. And can we bring it back?
Ted Ross with ITA. Several years ago, we were requested to take that down from a former council president and several offices. We were also under the hook to pay royalties because it was a part of the ASCAP, if I remember correctly, suite of songs. So the combination of the budget requirement plus a request from several council offices is why we switched it to the hold message that we have today.
Wait, so why was there a request against it? So there was a financial issue?
Yeah.
And
there was a financial issue, and there was a request to change it because I guess not all council offices were fans of the music or the type of music. So they were looking for different music. Being someone who's worked in ITA for the last 9 years, I can help tell you that this is not my first rodeo when it comes to 301 hold music. It's a very popular topic, and there seems to be a short list of people with very strong opinions. And so that's what I'm adding to it. But that was the reason why we no longer have the suite of songs that were proposed by Councilman LaBonge.
Okay, this is fascinating.
I thought I'd just add more songs than take a break. Go ahead.
I think one thing is that if there's licensing fees that we need to pay for songs, that's certainly something, given that we have so many big music companies located in Los Angeles, that might be something that they would actually be willing to donate. And I will happily report back at our next meeting, because I have some friends in the music industry, on how we could even think about doing that. But the other question I had was about actually I think the hold music was replaced with useful messages about city services. So that's just that in a more serious front. Did want to say that I've called 311 and found those messages to actually be quite helpful.
Yes, and when we were discussing, what that next iteration was, the ITA proposed using our Channel 35, who does LA This Week, to create the voice recording. So every week we're actually changing the message and making it useful for maybe what's happening over the weekend. So that was a proposal we had that seemed to satisfy prior. So I'm glad you found it useful, because we really do take an extra effort every week to record new messages that Angelinos would find beneficial.
Yeah, and it wasn't just me, by the way, when we were talking about this on my staff. Another person on my staff was like, yes, I find those messages very helpful, so great work. And I think as someone who really is thinking about how we can get useful information out to people as quickly as possible, having it be part of the messages that people get when they call 311 is a really good idea. So I guess my question is really just, is there a way to do this and make sure that the city tips are still available for people when they call in?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, the tips will stay in place and will continue to be refreshed and updated. The same tips or additional ones can be provided. But yes, we could incorporate the message and the recording without removing or changing it.
Okay, well, that's great. I just was wondering, I like the music idea, and I wonder whether we could just continue this item till next time to just look at, whether I'm sorry, Councilmember Bloomfield, you have your hand raised.
No, that was left over. Sorry.
Okay, I know this is a relatively, not essential for. I mean, it's a lovely way to remember Councilmember Labange. And I do like the music idea as well, and I wonder if we could just take a beat and ask about the music question and then bring this back next time, if that's okay with you guys.
Great.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we're continuing that item. So, Mr. Espinoza, is there anything else pending before the committee at this time?
No, the desk is clear, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you all.